If only it were this simple. Now, of course, menstrual cycles are not consistently 28 days, with ovulation occurring exactly on day 14. Now, it's true that the second half of the menstrual cycle, day 14 to day 28, does tend to be fairly consistent. So that means that if a menstrual cycle lasted for 30 days, as it could well, and the last half of the menstrual cycle was indeed 14 days, then in that 30-day menstrual cycle, ovulation would have occurred on day 16. But of course, we don't know that till the end of the month, with the start of the next cycle. Conversely, the menstrual cycle 1 month could be 26 days. And given that it's the second half of the menstrual cycle that tends to be consistent, if it was a 26-day menstrual cycle, that means in that cycle ovulation would have occurred on day 12, which of course pushes everything back. But of course we don't know that until the next menstrual period comes along. And menstrual cycles can vary really quite dramatically. So to use this as a means of contraception is a complete non-starter. This is not a safe, viable means of contraception. And if you're a healthcare professional or a teacher, teach young people this, that even as experienced clinicians, we're not really smart enough to work out when the safe period is. So certainly non-professionals are not going to be able to do that because we can't do it. So we can't use this as a means of contraception. It does say when fertilization is more likely to occur or less likely to occur, but we can never know. So as a means of contraception, we do not teach this. But of course, people want to conceive sometimes. So to maximize the probability of conception, what sort of advice should we give people? Well, if ovulation occurs on day 14 and the sperm remain very viable inside the female genital tract for 3 days, then I think you can see that anything from day 11 and the ovum lives for 12 to 24 hours after it's been produced. I think you can see that the time when conception is most likely to occur is if sexual intercourse occurs from day 11 to day 14.5. That's the time that conception is most likely to occur. And it's probable that conception is most likely to occur if the sperm are already waiting high in the fallopian tube. So the sperm will be deposited high in the vagina. The sperm will have to travel through the cervix, through the uterus, up into the fallopian tube, because conception occurs high in the fallopian tube. What we should call the uterine tube, actually. Bad habit. We should now call it the uterine tube. Now, the sperm probably take between, well, we don't really know actually, probably between an hour and 12 hours to be able to swim up into the high fallopian tube, but sometimes that can be aided by active muscular contractions of the cervix and the uterus. But still, the best time is going to be in that period when conception is most likely to occur. Now, how do we know when this time is going to be to advise couples on the best chances of conceiving in a particular ovarian cycle? Well, of course, if the cycles are regular, the regular 28 days, then ovulation is very likely to be on day 14. But of course, we can't guarantee that because the first half of the menstrual cycle particularly has a variable time course. So there's a bit of probability here, a bit of what you might call luck involved. Some women are aware of a sensation that they can associate with ovulation. And if that were the case and they were to have intercourse very shortly after that, then it's reasonable that the sperm could get up into the fallopian tube in that first 12 to 24 hours and lead to conception. That's certainly viable. Many women don't have a physical sensation, though, associated with ovulation. Sometimes in the days before ovulation, the temperature will go down a little bit and then the temperature will rise a little bit, not much more than 0.5 degrees centigrade. In fact, not even that, 0.2 or 0.3 of a degree centigrade. So there can be a slight blip in temperature associated with ovulation. can be observed for with accurate recordings of temperature. And round about the time of ovulation and just before ovulation, there's a change in the nature of the mucus. There's abundant, clear, stretchy cervical mucus produced to facilitate the passage of sperm at round about this time as well. So sometimes we can educate women to recognise the changes in their mucus, and thereby indicating at which time sexual intercourse will be most likely to generate conception. Now, all this process is controlled by the brain, actually, by the hypothalamus, producing gonadotrophic releasing hormones. And that will affect the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland will produce follicular stimulating hormone, which will stimulate the follicle to start developing in the first half of the menstrual cycle, causing the follicle to produce estrogens from the granulosa cells. And then in the second half of the menstrual cycle, this is going to be controlled largely by the luteinizing hormone from the pituitary gland, from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, which is going to stimulate the production of estrogen, but lots of progesterone is produced in the second half of the menstrual cycle. So estrogen is largely stimulating the development of the endometrium. Progesterone is maintaining the development of the endometrium in the second half of the menstrual cycle. And then when the levels of estrogen and progesterone start to drop towards the end of the cycle, the endometrium is no longer maintained. There'll be vasoconstriction in the endometrium, and menstruation will occur. So just a little bit there about the practical aspects of the ovarian or the menstrual cycle.